you, Sumit, for that very, I think, insightful presentation on not just what HSBC can offer to Indonesia, but where Indonesia is going as a nation. And I think that very dovetails very well into the theme for this conference, which is Indonesia 2045. If I may, I'd just like to pick up one point, and I think we've discussed this before. You mentioned that Indonesia's story is not well known. People understand, but maybe don't fully appreciate what's going on here. The dramatic changes that are underway in Indonesia. Why is that so? Is it because we don't jump and shout about ourselves so much? We are poor in our marketing. Why is the Indonesia story not so sexy outside?
So I think this is true not just for Indonesia, it's true for Asia as a whole, right? Let's reflect, let's take a step back. It's not been that long since Asia became or began to become fashionable. Even 10 years ago, if you spoke about growth, you spoke about global potential, people would look at Europe, people would look at America, North America, people would talk about the potential which Argentina and Brazil, Latin American countries afforded. Yeah, Asia was always there. And for a long time, even China, the China story, even though China began working on infrastructure, working on growth, delivering results for over 15 years today, even the China story took a long time to be heard, to be understood, and to be believed. So to me, one thing is just time. Whenever I am presenting Indonesia to an audience outside of this country, when I say Indonesia is the 4th most populous country in the world, after China, India, USA, I can see the look of surprise on people's faces. When I tell them that east to west Indonesia spans the same distance as a flight from New York to London, people in London are aghast, saying, really? Never knew that. So I just think, you've got this thing called top of mind recall, Indonesia, Asia. Asia has very reluctantly, gradually come up to, the minds of international investors. China, of course, has been leading the way. But, so I think that's one big factor. And the second factor is, what Pa Shoaib alluded to. I don't think we market ourselves. Forget about marketing ourselves well. I don't think we market ourselves. So I think we need, sustained marketing for the country, for projects in the country. And it's not going to happen overnight that, we produce a nice PowerPoint, we produce a nice presentation, and suddenly investors will be flocking to come in. It's going to take some time. But people are interested today. And, whenever I meet people, I always say, what? I can answer all the questions you have. But the only way for you to be comfortable is fly down. Come into the country. See the country. Because people have the most ridiculous ideas and thoughts in their minds. And I have till now, despite Macet and all of the other issues which Jakarta faces, I have never, ever met an investor who has come to Indonesia or Jakarta for the first time and has not said, wow, that was much better than I thought.
Great. So this is a dialogue. So are there any questions from the floor? Any thoughts? Can we give someone else a chance first, then I'll come back to you? Yes, in the middle.
Thank you, Mr. Dutta. Minister of Finance said that banks should have a technology vision. My question is, what is the HSBC technology vision for the next And I would like to ask you about your opinion about the financial technology, because in Indonesia it's growing rapidly. So do you think is this an opportunity or it's a threat? And what do you expect from the Bank of Indonesia as a regulator to provide a fair rules or regulations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I answer the question, can I check, is anyone here from Bank of Indonesia? No, I'm just joking. So look, I think the vision of Bank of Indonesia, of OJK, our regulators, of the Ministry of Finance is spot on. And I think actually in technology, I think Indonesian banks are much more sophisticated than the counterparts in many other countries, right? You know, when I first came, you know, as part of HSBC to Indonesia 3 years ago, I'm used to seeing our customer service levels significantly higher than any other local bank. But when I came here, I found BCA, Mandiri right up there. And they're able to deliver this level of service using technology. So I think we are already in a pretty good place. But we need to continue. So to answer your first question, what is HSBC's vision? Our vision is we've got to invest big time, which is why you saw from the presentation, we are putting $1 billion into just fintech. So we're working with innovation labs, we're working with fintech companies, right, to make sure we understand the mindset of the generations to be. So one is the consumer piece. In terms of the corporate piece, we are pretty okay because today, as an international bank, we have an international technology platform. So if you are an Indonesian customer, you are expanding into Hong Kong, into Singapore, into Thailand, or you want to go to UK, we can link you up. We can give you payment trade solutions covering each and every one of these, which is fairly basic, a requirement for any global bank. So I just think the key thing is, banks have got to recognize that their future, their survival, depends upon their willingness to invest in technology. I know 10 years back, dot-com boom, 99, 2000, everyone said, oh, physical distribution is dead, right? And it hasn't happened. But it's happening, right? Bookstores, right? Barnes and Nobles. Look at all the bookstores gradually, slowly getting reduced. And the same thing is going to also happen to bank branches. Will they go away altogether? Absolutely not. Will the number of bank branches required 10 years from now be fewer than the number of bank branches required today? Absolutely yes. So investing in technology is really, really important. So I just think, frankly, we share the vision which the government of Indonesia, Bank of Indonesia, OJK have, which is that banks must commit a significant amount of their revenue to technology spend to provide better services for its customers, to increase its reach, to increase and improve its turnaround time, which HSBC hopefully is doing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Alistair, not yet. The lady on the right. Sorry, I want to hear fresh voices.
Hi, Mr. Sumit. My name is Akisa. I'm a consultant from Michael Page, specializing in financial services. So on a daily basis, I do meet people, professional people and leaders from the financial services industry, including banking, of course. So I can already see that digital obviously is a common trend and the red lines that everybody is discussing. But then when I talk to these people, also two topics arises. First is that whether we have enough talent, local professionals who will be able to give sustainable and leading the change in the digital era. And secondly, this is, I think, a bit funny. There are some topics and forums happening in the HR forums, obviously, within talent and social media platforms such as LinkedIn, and asking whether, if then the digital era has come, whether they will change, replace, I would say, the existing talents. So I'm curious whether, what is your take on that issue? Thank you.
So, look, I think this is true not just of banking, this is true for any industry in Indonesia, the search for talent. And it's true not just of Indonesia, it's true globally, right? Every country, the search for talent is a real search, right? So without the right kind of talent in the banking industry, not only will the banking industry in Indonesia not be able to fulfill its potential, but Indonesia itself will not be able to fulfill its potential, because banking provides the fuel, right, which companies need to grow. And if the people providing the fuel are not as good as they need to be, they cannot give you the best advice, it's going to hamper the growth of the entire country. So, you know, frankly, I think this is a real issue, and I really, really would like to see some concrete steps being developed to make sure there's this strong pipeline of talent into the banking industry. To your second question, will digital mean that the number of banking jobs are no longer as many? Yes and no. Will, you know, because by definition, right, if you need 10,000 branches today and you need 9,000 branches tomorrow, right, branches don't come with themselves, they come with people, so you could potentially need slightly fewer people. But don't forget, right, I mean, the country itself is growing. The number of people requiring banking solutions is growing, right? So today only a part of Indonesia's population has access to banking services. How are they going to get acquainted with what is banking, what is a savings account, what is a credit card? Not just by online mechanism, right? When you go and you talk to someone about where you want to invest your money, do you make your decision purely on what your web page tells you, or do you talk to someone? So to me, you know, banking is about money, right? And money is something which is very precious to most of us. When we make decisions on money, the printed page or the web page or an online screen alone will never be sufficient for us to make our big decisions. So to me, the need for value-added professionals in the banking industry for the next 20 years, next 30 years can only increase.
Thank you. I think maybe we have time for 2 more questions. The lady in the center, and then Mr. Hassan on the side. A lot of ladies asking questions.
Hi, Mr. Sumit. My name is Dilara Siti. I'm from L'Oreal, Indonesia. So I understand that Indonesia wants to provide better education, yeah, to the people. And we also understand that we're trying to give accessibility to more Indonesian to go to a tertiary, level, yeah, above just high education, yeah. Is there any initiative from your bank in enabling them to be able, because the capital per family is very low, and yet higher education requires more funding. So are you helping them to achieve this?
Yeah. So look, I think that's a very valid question. So like I'm guessing all other organizations in Indonesia, we also have a CSR piece. So I think I'd like to just clarify, being very frank. This part of it to us, is it a part of our business model? Not really, because we aren't good at it, right? But what we do, so for instance, last year or 2015, I can't recall, we gave away $5 million, where a big chunk was focused on education. So, in terms of our theme for our spending, in terms of our CSR activities, education is a big theme for us, and the second is environment, right? But for us, education and financial education is a big piece. So among the things that we do is we go through Yayasans, where we help them go to, other areas of Indonesia which are not as well banked, to spread the spirit and the knowledge of financial education, right? To teach them what is the difference between a debit card and a credit card. What is a savings account? What should you look out for to make sure whatever financial product you buy from a bank is actually relevant to your needs. Yeah. So, for us, spreading financial education is something which we believe as a bank we should do, right? Helping the environment, we're very happy to do it, but pretty much any other corporate can help the environment as well. But because we are in the banking sector, improving banking knowledge, improving financial knowledge is something we view as being absolutely core. The other area where we've been trying to, invest in is in helping women entrepreneurs, right? And we've had different organizations in different countries around the world actually having a lot of success in terms of empowering women. So maybe in some country, in some village, the husband's out on the field. How do you make sure the ladies who want to work, how do you make them productive? So again, we've been going through Yaya Sons. We are not very good in microfinance ourselves. So instead of experimenting with something where we don't have core experience, we go to people who have the core experience and we provide them funding to make sure that they can use their experience and actually reach out more effectively to their target population. But in a nutshell, this is something absolutely fundamental. We believe that as an organization which has been in Indonesia, which has benefited from Indonesia's generosity for the last 130 years, a country which we want to call home for the next 130 years, we have to give back. And to me, financial education is absolutely a number one priority.
Thank you. Hassan? Maybe one last question?
Hi, my name is Hassan. My question is, how do traditional banks like HSBC deals with disruptive banking services? One specific problem I want to highlight is that the Generation X of Indonesians, they are going global. They are working and studying overseas, and there is a very specific problem of transferring money internationally. So how do you deal with disruptive services like TransferWise, who provides a fraction of cost, compared to traditional interbanking transfers? Thanks.
So, the short answer to your question in terms of how do banks, traditional banks, deal with disruptors, the answer is reluctantly. But we have to do it, right? It's a reality. And it's not yet staring us in the face now, but it will tomorrow. And it will not be the day after tomorrow, it will be tomorrow. So we absolutely are, we are cognizant of the dangers. And to me, the issue, frankly, is not technology. It is not willingness to invest. It is not willingness to explore new ways of doing things. The problem is regulation. Because as a bank, we have to cater to global regulation, which means for me, sitting here in Indonesia, of course, I will need to make sure that my Indonesian regulator, his concerns, her concerns are taken care of. But because HSBC is a global organization, if the US regulator wants a particular way of doing things to make sure there's transparency, etc., I have to adhere to that even in Indonesia. And a lot of the core transfer players who are not banks, they don't deal with this regulation. So that creates an uneven playing field. But to me, that's not really, it's not a complaint, it's not a concern. The fact is, one of the things which is gradually taking prominence today is financial crime. And banks globally are beginning to understand more and more of how financial crime is using the banking system to further its needs. So, as HSBC today, we spend a lot of time in focusing on how we prevent financial crime from happening. I mean, think about it, right? People talk of drug smuggling. How would someone move drugs from Indonesia to any other country in the world, right? Mexico, USA, Latin America, Australia, etc., if they could not also transfer funds across? So banks, just like for a global enterprise, having a global bank is a lifeline to actually helping the global business flourish. For a global financial crime syndicate, for a global mafia, having access to the banking system is also a must-have. So we've now been engaged full-time by our regulators globally to say you've got to become that much more strict in how you allow inter-country payments to go through. And we frankly get a lot of grief from our customers, and justifiably so, because we are becoming slower at doing this. And they say exactly what you're saying. If we go outside of the banking system, we can potentially do it quicker. And the answer is yes, you can. So I think eventually, this is something relatively new, but eventually, I think we will come to a more stable process in which not only will transfers to other countries, to to your accounts in other places be done in a more seamless fashion, but the cost also will come down significantly. Because look, it's a marketplace, right? If you can go to this bank and get something at $10 and you can go outside and get it for $1, and if the safety and convenience is of a similar standard, of course you'll go to the cheaper provider. What is keeping banks alive today is the fact that the perceived safety, the perceived security, the perceived level of trust in a bank moving a transfer for you than you going to an external provider is still higher. But those barriers are coming down.
Okay, I think we'll wrap up the session again. Thank you very much, Pak Sumit Dutta, CEO of HSBC Indonesia, for your time this morning, and I think for sharing with us the insights on the future of banking. And I think the one takeaway I would like to really emphasize is, as Indonesia progresses and in terms of building up its infrastructure towards 2045, the role of financial sector is very critical, because we will need financing. And I think Pak Budi Karya this morning mentioned very clearly that the Indonesian government has also shifted its mindset in terms of being a lot more open to foreign investors. And I think that's where HSBC and other banks, of course, will really play a very pivotal role. So can you please join me in thanking Pak Sumit for his time this morning and for his insights.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.